So when I was on campus looking for a job, I finally did get a job, and it was going through a different class and women, and this is like a middle class guy or a professor. They are the ones that help secure the job. Meanwhile, here come fucking cleaning people trying to come into it was like a call center for fundraising for the university. They would come in there and try to take over and like be over the lady. Then here you have a well-educated woman, really, really intelligent in statistics, dealing with some really high-level math every day of her fucking life, like all day long. She's just dealing with numbers all day. And here comes white trash cleaning man dude to come in and pop in and say something to her, which meant that they were taking her off her network and essentially trying to be her mind. I was so like flabbergasted, and I was like, you poor lady, like who are these cleaning people? And so you lose a lot. And of course these people that are cleaning people are not connected to money. As we see, they're not connected to jobs, they're not connected to money, they're not connected to education, they're not connected to progress, they're not connected to brain activity. So you're essentially just connecting with deadness. And like if you just sit around them long enough, you will have no brain activity. And so you wonder, well, why has my brain stopped? They don't mind that. They a part of, and some of them like have mental disorders, and that's part of that autism, where they're so self-focused that it doesn't matter whether or not they communicate with other people. Like, I don't mind being by myself, but I enjoy, like, me and my friends that were normal, our weekly thing was to watch things on television together, go to one another's house, go out to eat, go to dance, call each other on the phone like normal fucking people. Then I get around autistic white trash, and they don't talk to each other except for at church. Or if they do, they can only say certain phrases, praise the Lord. That's all they talk about. That's all they can do. Well, I didn't know that there was a power over them that would prevent them from like even thinking outside of what they needed to do. And I haven't really had or allowed myself the building of my mind in a way that could really generate anything, because if you don't protect it, they'll come and steal it from you. So like they'll come and interact with you just because you know what to do, and then they might have been stuck with something for like years, and then they come to meet you just to literally steal the ideas. That's why I've been watching the video of the one-upper. You have to fight those people off. They are essentially stealing things from you. Let me tell you about this. Okay, if you would think about being on a period, when you're on your period, if you're on a team, and any girl that's been on any kind of team knows that all the girls will get on the same period cycle after a while. Whether you like it or not, it would happen. And so like maybe not everybody, but just about everybody on the team would be on some kind of similar cycle for your period. And then you have like bitch days where everybody was just bitching, and you're all like, but we're still soccer players, and we're still track runners, and so we still have to do our jobs. And to watch that phenomena is what happens with autistic individuals, cult groups, community groups, even large groups. They can get into such a sync with one another, apartment complexes, communities, houses, which is really important for the police to understand. Sometimes you're dealing with one house, and you have that one house displaying something that's wrong in that whole area. And so like they'll know like there are certain areas you have to be careful. Like every time I deal with this street, some shit crazy happens within the next few days because I was on that street. And people are like, well, what are you talking about? You're right. There are things that are happening cyclically because a lot of these people, because of their turning off their brain activity, like part of your brain activity is to get up and make a different decision. Like life really is, and this whole god-awful setup that we're in, you're supposed to be solving the problem. The Holocaust began to break as these crews of Holocaust victims were given the opportunity to problem solve and to pull apart parts of insects. So what was going on is they began to study what was destroying them. So if you are around people long enough, and I don't know if I haven't done in-depth psychology courses, or I'm not an MSW or anything like that. I'm just really observant, but I have taken like animal behavior courses, and so I sometimes think of people as like, I see you giving me animal behavior, and so I would define it within this kind of insect or this kind of animal, and and we kind of mimic some of those things between animals and humans. And so that's how I see things. Like I say, oh, you're acting like an ant colony, or you're acting like a wolf pack. Their communication different. Their communication methods are different. Parts of the world that they're from are different. The terrain and everything that they're in. Like mountain goats are not the same as farm goats. There are different characteristics for how a mountain goat gets away from a mountain lion as opposed to a farm goat being used to being in a enclosed area and not knowing shit about a predator, and they don't know to run. So it's a big difference. Oh crap! So. And so what they'll do is they'll come and like take your mind, and they would take her mind. And so I would watch this, and I was like, oh my god, like. And what you see with them, and I don't know what this is they have like a backdoor entry to a lot of people's minds, and it's almost like you watching like The Good Son, and it's this like nice little kid, but he's killing people when nobody's looking. That's how they are. And so how they program themselves is to be unassuming. But in that unassuming nature, they are fulfilling the function of some kind of keystone predator. So they're under a keystone predator. Whether that characteristics of that predator, that main predator in the area, how he runs his like boat or his ship, or how he runs his congregation, is how you're going to get the kind of personalities that you'll get out of that congregation, out of that community, out of that area. Like when I went to Belize, one of the first things we did was we learned about keystone predators, we learned about dangerous fish that we would encounter when we went to the reef, and we learned about the different kinds of trees. So sometimes I go to areas, and like even when I was on campus, I'll just go through and see the different kind of trees available, and what that'll do is it'll help me, like as I'm encountering people, like because I've stratified something, the system will stratify things for me. And because I've like taken inventory of what's around me, it'll show me the inventory that I look at. So this is like from grade school I learned these things. Like there are all kinds of little weird things that you can do to kind of manipulate the system to give you what you need. And so when the Holocaust was occurring, I didn't know this, but they were doing research on certain things and just basic problem solving. Well, that basic problem solving means that they're literally like digesting a problem or solving a problem. And so you put in what you get out. And if you put solving the problems in, then you get solving the problems out. So when I was dealing with White Horse and they were trying to steal my mind, a lot of the time I spent was doing like games for memory. I used, what's the name of it? Neurolinguistics was another thing I learned about, but it's like an iPhone game, an iPhone like app, and you play it, and what it does is it works on your memory, it works on your long-term memory, it works on your visual memory, and it works on your recall memory. And so their attempt, what they wanted from me was to dumb me down, to make me back up and be so fearful that I would lose my purpose and I would lose my stance of who I was, so that they could make me something else. And so this pastor, his joy was to remake people. A lot of narcissists, their joy is to destroy people's lives and act like they built them back. But you don't know really what you're getting a part of until you recognize what kind of predator he was. And he was, or predator you're under, and he happened to be like a wolf. And so he would deal in like small packs of people. So you would kind of get an indication of how the packs moved and what they did and what they'll give you and how they behave when they're with certain groups, or when we're with during the conferences. Then that was the time for you to get help. So like I got help from the cult, and I got help on campus when there was company, when there were conferences, then I would say, "Oh my God, let me tell you what's been happening to me. Can you tell me whether or not this sounds odd?" And then I would share. And when the last job that I had, that was the nightmare, they were like, "No, that's not normal. You sound like you're being abused. What kind of job is this?" And I was like, "Thank you. I've been telling people this." But within that system, they don't tell on each other. And they will not break that silence. Even if they know that you're being murdered, they will not stop the abuse. So you have to go outside of that system to get help, which is why I call other states. And you also have to find people that have the capability of answering problems themselves. A lot of people, especially in these networks, nobody holds them accountable for not making any progress, and that's why a lot of stores have been closing. You got a lot of things that are just shutting down because you need brain activity to do business. I don't care how many times you wiggle your legs with autism, you can't run a business wiggling your legs. So you have to eventually solve some problems and make some money. Anyway, so knowing that, when I was at that job, or then on campus where we were student fundraising, I could not get enough hours because if I worked any extra hours, they would harass me until I would leave. And I thought it was just me. But then I found that there are other black women that had worked at that call center, and I didn't work with them on any other day. We just happened to have an all-in day where everybody went to work on that day, and I saw, oh, look, there are other black women that work here. So I go in, and they are talking about, girl, I do not work extra hours here. And I was like, I'm just listening to them, and they're like, I know, I just get my hours in, and I just go. And literally, it was so abusive at that place, between the cleaning people and the abusive white boys that were there that would abuse the girls. And they had the girls dressing inappropriately, very sexual in nature and how they were dressing. They were like essentially just sexually abusing the women during work, like the entire time we were at work. And so when I went there, I was like, oh my God, like, why are you dressing more and more sluttily? And these were gorgeous girls. They were just, normal women that, were preparing to be getting, their degree and then going on to be employed. And so I was like, what the hell are you wearing to work? And like, I didn't have anything either. I was looking crazy. Praise the Lord. And, as I still don't really have, the reason why I really don't care about how I'm dressed is because it's so below how I like to dress. I just don't care. I'm like, it all looks like crap anyway, so it doesn't really matter, so just throw something on anyway. And so I saw these young ladies, and they were like being eviscerated by these boys. And so eventually I had to deal with them myself, and what they used was words and physical intimidation. And they would play little games and things like that. And the girls, would always be on the defensive until finally, like when I got there, we started being able to kind of turn the tide so that they heard somebody say, no, 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 no. And both of them left. The one that abused us, and like the girls would literally run out of the job, he left, and then another little asshole left. And like, it didn't take much. I didn't like abuse them. I just kept saying no, and then I would tell on them with the Office of Institutional Equity, which was like one of the arms of universities. If you were being sexually harassed or if you were being abused by someone, including faculty, it was just an opportunity for you to have mediation where someone would say, okay, well, I see that we have miscommunication between you. They're not necessarily in trouble, but they are made aware that you've caused somebody else some kind of like trauma, and we need to probably mediate because the campus is supposed to be safe for everyone. And what happens with communities is people don't realize, even just reminding myself, seeing what happened in Baltimore, you do have communities where there are a lot of levels of abuse, and you have to push against it, not necessarily violently or anything like that, but there are ways where you can work the system to be able to get your needs met. And so I could not get enough hours. We got, and the girls got rid of these of these guys. I don't even know, like, they were just like raw. And the guys were like, woo! And so after those guys left, the young men that came back were much more respectful. They they weren't buttheads. They weren't rude. They weren't sneaky. It was like normal people. They like brought like normal people, and it was comforting because some of the young men were protective, and so like I don't know if they had sisters. You could tell the difference. You know, there were some that were helpful. Like one of the young men was very helpful with the whole group. Like when he was there, it was like all the hens could rest because there was some form of protection there, and he would be on it, you know, and just making sure that we were able to do our job. Because a lot of the distraction I think that the cleaning people were bringing was not being able to do your job, not being able to get work done, and not meeting criteria, which meant people that were losing their jobs more quickly. And I was like, oh, I'm not losing my job. Like, and all of the jobs that I've been having since I left this white group have been pushing for you to lose your job, which is a form of abuse. And like I haven't figured out yet, how do you hold those groups accountable? And they are well connected. And you know, if you could take the psychological connection of, you know, periods being syncable, and then because they can be synced, you can have people that, you know, after a while, after you've been on the team with each other, I'm gonna bring like an extra hair hair tie one day, and you're gonna need it, or I'm gonna bring an extra pair of shin guards one day, and you're gonna need them, or you know, and somebody will have what you need, and you'll find that on teams. Like our soccer team might be like, oh, you know, I have an extra pair of shin guards if you need to use them today. I just happen to, you know, wash all of mine, and so you'd be like, oh my gosh, thank you, and that would be how you would, or you go to a game and you didn't have like your socks, and you'd be like, oh, I washed my socks, and so you'd have that one person that had what you needed. That's kind of what goes on in these communities, and that's kind of what happens when you think about like things that happen in like neighborhoods. You have like, I don't know, like another thing that I saw with those cleaning people was they would pull like the police officers to different areas and just talk. Now this is the locals. Because they would not like law enforcement, they would do things to degrade them. And so like, unfortunately with law enforcement, and I saw it more intimately on the campus, like they end up having to stand outside a lot, which is not good. Like you having to be on the ground is not a good thing, because you imagine like the gravitational pressure that is on you just for being in contact. Like you're on a magnet. The world is a magnet. You're a small little being and the world is huge. It would be better for you to be off of that huge magnet, given what's going on like in various realms of being in contact with things. And so they have a heavy load on them from being able to stand outside for long periods of time, and like you have to be made for that. Like not everybody can do it, and because of that, that system knows that, and what they do is they'll hold them in areas that they're uncomfortable until they like pop off. And so I think like sometimes you have police officers that are shooting people unfortunately because of this phenomenon. You know, black women that are going off on you because of this phenomenon, and like that whole atmosphere is just waiting for you to erupt. And that's a whole other thing. But knowing that, what happened was I found out that I wasn't the only one that was being pressured to leave early and to not get my hours. And so, you know, I was praying about it. I was like, Lord, you know, I need more hours. I was only getting like 20 hours a week or something like that, but we could get up to 40. So I was like, well, maybe I could go up to 30 or something, you know. And so one white man said the words that released the system to give me the hours in one day. And what happened is I had ice cream for breakfast, and for that breakfast, a Freemasons group that was having, a Christian group that was having church at a former Freemasons lodge came to me and just encouraged me out of nowhere. And I was like, where is this coming? I had like vanilla bean ice cream, and I was like, oh my gosh, like literally it was like a vanilla bean ice cream. That occurred. And I was like, oh, that's great. What a great, you know, to be strengthened by, like I have Freemasons in the history, like when my grandfather was a Freemason, and so I was like, oh, thank you, Lord. Any kind of support at this point would be helpful because I was just nowhere, and just very vulnerable. And then within the next few hours, there's this like Christian pastor that was kind of on campus, and he would do different like teachings and stuff on campus. He came to me and he said he literally like released these words that allowed them to make them give me the hours, and I got the hours within the next few days. And so he said, like, we're just gonna say right now, she needs all the hours she can get. Let her have the hours, and you just go to work and you get those hours. And what had not been available to me was opened up in his words. And it was because it was a white male, and that system was guided by white males, and he said it to open up those doors. And so now when my other professor who was Jewish would say things, they wouldn't necessarily follow him. But he was a different class, kind of. So, but he wasn't, but he was. And the cleaning people were all in the professor's offices. And I'm thinking, you little cretins, why are you all in the professor's offices? You're not going to be doing anything else with your lives. You're just like maggots. You're literally like maggots. Like, what are you doing? It was very disturbing, and it showed that our universities are quite in a lot of danger. And what's generating that desire for them to continue to make contact with the professors is just utter destruction. They like to degrade things. A lot of them have chips on their shoulders. They're very jealous. And I don't know about you, but a lot of people that go to college aren't necessarily jealous. You end up being and understanding who you are and what you can and cannot do. And you can't really be jealous because either you can handle it or you can't. And you either can figure it out or you can't. And especially at that university is so competitive, like so many people were dropping out of classes. Unfortunately, I think a lot of that had to do with a lot of things that were going on campus, whatever. But the power of your words means that those words that he released allowed me to have something that had been blocked previously, which made me know that Pastor Jeff and a lot of my system that are holding me with these random pastors that ended up kind of being, I'm like kind of being led around like I'm a part of a harem. They're not releasing what they're supposed to allow like employment and allow, and most of the time they want you under them. And so they won't release what they're supposed to because they want you to come to them. Or they get like props for like destroying women or keeping certain women. So in my case, like I'm still a virgin. And so that is a commodity. And so Pastor Jeff knows that. These organizations know that. These atmospheres that I'm in know that. And literally, like, oh my gosh, you have no idea what that means. In these systems, like we watched the video, rigor mortis, Japanese video, the blood of a virgin is very powerful in this spiritual thing. And so it will use you like, I don't know what it does, but for that system, it has a value. And it has a value that it won't tell you about, especially if you're dealing with white trash. And I think a part of me making the money that I did prior was because I was among people that were honoring my virginity and like how I lived, even though it was not perfect, protecting the virginity as well. Because I'm like, woo, what am I gonna get married? Yeah. Anyway, and so because of that, I think that the things that are said or kept from you are very important. And here's another thing, I keep telling people things about what they're doing and they just ignore me, and then like a year later I get back and they've been degraded by something, and I'm like, I've told you before, you don't want to listen to anything I say, you might think I'm crazy or whatever. Like, I really don't care if you think I'm crazy because I'm not, but like I'm trying to help you stop yourself from degrading yourself and you don't listen. Then you're degraded, and then then you pull back on me, and then I'm back around you again, probably because you lost something or you needed something. And if you would have just listened to me before, you wouldn't need this. But I have to come back because, like, even me going back to campus, there were things that were happening on campus, and the Asian students were like, they didn't know what to do with it. And I got there, and the problem was, like, they had to work together differently. They had to use their space differently. They had to choose where to be. And, you have to, like, recognize what happens when you're doing certain things or you're around certain people. And you have to be more, you have to remember better things that you're doing and what's happening after you're doing those things, so that you notice, like, something's degrading me, or something's like stopping my ability to have a memory that would remind myself not to do this or that. And so, like, even when I was a little girl, like, I remember I would have vivid dreams, and then I had a period where I didn't dream. And so, like, my choice of the pajamas, like, whether I would wear a gown, or I wear, like, shorts, or I wear long pants, or I wear socks or not wear socks, or something around my head. I was trying all these combinations of things so I could dream again, because I knew something had changed. And so that's how it goes. So anyway, all of that to say that things that you do say about yourself and things that are said around you are important, and especially if you have a mother that is saying dark things to you. Yes, she is demonized. She can be going to church every single day. There's something in her that is not exuding light. If all she's exuding is darkness, then she has darkness in her, and you will display what you are, and whether you like it or not, especially in the system, because whatever these little things are that are interacting with us are honest. They're truthful, and like they won't lie. They do lie. They will speak lies, but at the same time, that system can't lie. So yeah, so learn how to work the system about that in that capacity, because it's very helpful, and it lets you know that you need to be careful who you allow. A lot of the Christian things that my mom listens to online are really derogatory. They're dark, they're detrimental, and I don't think that the pastors that are preaching them are like in sync with what's happening right now. It's like the beginning of the year, and I'm hearing a lot of degradation with what these pastors are talking about. Now, you wouldn't think a pastor could do that, but when I was with White Horse, like for like 6 months, I was reading dark Bible verses from out of my Bible. And usually, this is already a dark period, and it would like tell me like horrible things. Well, there was a darkness that was coming, and like one of the words that came to my mind while I was praying through this White Horse place was insidious. I was like, what does that word mean? But that was what they were doing to me. They were being insidious towards me. They were bringing something dark towards me, and so that was the word that was in my spirit all the time, like the last few months that I was with White Horse. And when I was with South Bend for the first few months, the word nefarious, and nefarious things bring something illegal towards you, and so that was the atmosphere I was in, nefarious, and so like I don't have a word for this atmosphere, but it was amazing to have that happen, but it was also troubling that I was doing so much worship and praying and under this holy group of people, and I was getting such darkness, but it was what they were sending me. They were sending me darkness. He was sending me curses. He was sending me this hurt, white, bigoted man's hidden chip, and that's what he was giving me. And so whatever he exuded towards me, and he had to be sneaky, because you become like them, you can read each other's thoughts, and then so you can hear when he's being mean to you. And that's what happens with me with the police on campus. Like, I would hear what they were going to do before they would come to visit me, and I was like, did you mean to do that? Did you tell me you were going to come here before you got to me? Because I knew you were going to come here. And then I was like, that's kind of creepy, but it was kind of good, because the lower income white people that were trying to be intimidating towards me wanted me to be fearful, and I was like, I can't be fearful of them, because they're my help, and they're the only thing that check your crazy asses. And honey, I have a police chief in my family that was my great uncle that I would fish under, and he was my other papa that would take the fish off of the hook for me. So like, my understanding of law enforcement is different than your fear of them, because that's like, family members, whether they're doing wrong or right or whatever, that's still like, I just have a different concept of who they are. And so anyway, just to share that, and that is very helpful, because you need to be careful with the music that you're listening to and what's repeating in your spirit, because they're not going to tell you you're on this network. If you're around like a whole bunch of white people, watch what you listen to. If you're around a bunch of black people, not so much. You're gonna probably, you don't have as much schizophrenia and stuff in your network, but if you're around a whole bunch of white people, you be careful. Everything you listen to, they are like very literal. So like anything that you literally listen to is like what it will do to you, or how it'll behave towards you, or what you watch and what kind of video you watch is what it will give you. That's why when I was in college, I used to watch Braveheart and Gladiator, like when I would write papers. Like just I would just listen to the movies while I would write a paper. Well, and to them, I was like declaring war on them all the time. And I'm like, I'm listening to a movie. But for their system, like it treated me like a general or something. I was like a general. I'm listening to a movie, but for their system, I was what I was listening to. What you see is what you get. Is what they're the wizard. That's the system. But it's not. It's a little different with the collegiate background that I had. Once I got into the white trash, it was a whole other level of literal. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, oh my god. Their little literal is different than the collegiate literal. So there are gradations in how it's read by people's different understanding. And all that is the psychology of the human brain. Like we all process things differently. We all feel things differently. We all see things differently. We all have realms of things that we're more proficient in than others, and some people are good at, some things and not good at others. And so that's the variation. And one more thing. One really surprising thing with that is my mom shuts down so much. It's like watching something, and this is from a woman that generated like all this good stuff with me. Like she knew exactly what to say and do when I was like a teenager. When I got done and it was time for me to get employed, I was like a machine. Like literally not like a machine, but like my parents did a good job with me. As imperfect as my childhood was. And my educators did a really good job with me. Or, making me and helping me have a really good relationship with others, and not being perfect, being just a little violent, being very interested in learning and interested in education, but also being like religious, because you need something to generate momentum when you're black. Like, and if you don't have something to generate some kinds of momentum, if it's not all money, you need something to generate momentum, and that's important for people of color and minority groups. And so they gave me like the right balance. And so here I am with this wonderful woman that helped build me, and she acts like she doesn't know me, or she acts as though she's this just destructive person when she was not. She wasn't destructive. And I've seen her absolutely just tear my little brother apart. He's like nothing. And it was her that contributed to that with a lot of the things that she said. So you see me arguing with her and it seems like I'm being mean, but she's got a mouth that is like speaking death. And she speaks a lot of death, and I think it might be partially because like her other half has been buried, right? So my dad's dead, so that's her other half. And then like my brother's dead, and so like there's a darkness with me that I always fight. Like, I can go dark. I can go really like mean, and like I can be really interested in like dark things, because like I know that both of those realms exist, and I want to make sure I keep them balanced or whatever. And I think that my connection with my twin, like I remember when he died, like that day when you're a twin and you have that kind of connection that you can't explain. I can't explain even as a child, knowing that there was something different that I went through, and there are still like echoes of him in my presence that are undeniably not me but my brother. And so we all have that, and they come from different things, and you have to learn how to balance that and check that, so that I'll go to the cemetery and I'm like, I'll talk to my dad and my brother, not that they're alive, but spiritually you're still connected because of how we are all made. And so sometimes you need to vocalize your needs. And so like I think some of the things that were happening when I was at my job that was really difficult, I would go and tell my dad, Daddy, this is happening at work, and I don't know what to do, and if you were here, what would you do? And then answers would come. And so that's why I feel like, no offense, I know this is weird, but you see the Transformers and he meets him in the cemetery. I was like, that's what I feel like I used to meet my dad in the cemetery. Like, hey, Dad, what in the hell do I do in this situation? Like, Mom's not going to help. What are you going to do? And so some cultures are like that. Dios de los Muertos, they understand. And, certain other cultures, they are still in contact with the dead because they still have a presence. They are not gone, but they are. And so they're a part of you. And so you need, in my case, not everybody's like me, but I'm like really global with a lot of things, unfortunately, just because like whatever childhood stuff. And so I've needed to understand, like, when I was on the highway for months and months and months and months and months driving around, I said, this feels like I'm just being drugged around by something. What would compare to this? And I remember listening to the history of Japan, I think, and they had an era where they had the shoguns, and they had the feudal system included daimyos, and daimyos were like the landowners that would go back to Edo and to the capital city, and they'd like go for a few months a year, and they'd like make their rounds with taxes, reallocating the resources that they had, making sure the numbers were right with who was on the land and how much they were making for the land, and how much land are they going to reallocate to them. I don't know. The whole feudal system was going on, but the daimyos, they were like literally taken out of their role and their position by being drugged back and forth from their home to Edo. There were so many criteria for like dress of all the different levels of people that you have within your home, and like they had like samurai they had to keep. They had caste systems that were very distinct. They had to dress certain ways, so that meant they had to provide dressing for all of those people, which, obviously if you were a landowner, then you had the whole realm of the people that were producing food on your land, people that were holding on to the animals on your land. All those things needed to be like managed, and so they literally went bankrupt from the requirements of the capital city. And so they were like literally just run into the ground financially until they were bankrupt. And then that system, like, it literally like fell apart. And that's not the only way it happened. Like, there are a lot of things that were occurring simultaneously, but it really did contribute to the breakdown of the strength of those feudal lords, of those daimyos. And so I knew about that, and I said, Lord, I feel like that's what I've been doing. Like, I feel like somebody just knew I had monetary resources, and they just drugged me around until I was broke. And so that's what white trash will do to you. If they want you, they will pull you down into nothing, and then they will make you do what they need. Autistic kids will do that too. If you're working with kids that have like special needs, like if you are around them for a period of time, they will manipulate you to get their needs met. And like even the little psychopathic little kid that isn't getting their needs met, they'll manipulate situations to cause things to get their needs met. And that's because obviously, because of their special needs, like a person that can't hear will make other things occur around them so they can get their needs met. So that, I can't hear, but I can definitely like, do my other senses have been heightened. So like these autistic kids that were nonverbal I was around, they would manipulate the hell out of me to get their needs met, and like they would cause things to happen in other places to pull me to that other place so that they could ask me for something in another area. And so the cult people that I was around, a lot of them were autistic, and so like my network of finding the white trash, lower income people with a lot of mental problems that they've never seen a psychologist. That's all I'm dealing with. Like, and that's what you see me fighting is. I've got a lot of people around me that have no balance because they did not have that. They didn't have money to be able to have a psychologist as they were growing up, or therapy as they were growing up to rebalance. Because you have to rebalance your mind, and that's why you have your girlfriends and your friends and your family. You go back around your family and you go like, oh, let me get back into reality. You go back around. They remind you of who you are. Narcissists have this. Narcissists have a one supplier that has like their history, and like that one person like strokes their ego all the time. So like the narcissist will forget who they are, and but they'll go to that one source that they usually they use them the most, and that source will build them back up into that narcissist so that they remember how great they are. Whatever. It's creepy, but naturally as humans, when you're not imbalanced like a narcissist, you are meant to come back into your family or your group, that your larger family group, to rebalance one another, to recharge one another, to rebuild one another. That's another reason why white groups don't like when black groups get together. That strengthening, like they're trying to degrade you, and you're getting back together with the strength of your family, so you get to come back to that community, and they're trying to make you leave your house, and you're getting re-strengthened because you're going and having family reunions. And so they will fight you to not go to family reunions. But your family reunion, that whole group is rebuilt back up. And you go back and you can establish who you are, and that's how you maintain that stability. That's how you don't get off. Like when I worked at the corporate job, it was very, very stressful. Even though it was just me and one other young lady in the lab, some of the things that would happen to us would be like outside of our control. Like, oh, we got all these animals that died. What did you guys do to the animals? Or things that were outside of your control. Sometimes you were held accountable for, or we received a sample and somebody destroyed it. Did you destroy it? Or horrible things could happen, and so the amount of stress that you would deal with would be quite a lot. And so, you're scheduling things, and you got people that cost a lot of money, and you don't have what you need on that day because they didn't ship it or whatever. So anyway, I would go back to my family every weekend, and like I would do my hair. I would take care of myself again and remind myself, you have a degree, you have a purpose, God bless you with this job. You represent black people, you represent educated black people, you represent the sciences, you represent your college, you represent your state, you represent your city, you represent Howard Hughes, you represent Eli Lilly. These are what built you. You represent Stanley Clark. So, what do those things, how do you exude that? So every day when I was at work, those were the people that I was. I was Stanley Clark. I was Earlham College. I was South Bend. I was, a black woman. I was a Christian. I was psychologically balanced. I was multicultural, and I was global, and I was a scientist that was really always looking for the answers of questions that did not exist. And so, like for example, I knew that I was smart because when I had done my undergraduate research, my senior project, my professor could not help me. She had no idea of what my topic was, so she just like kind of reviewed it, and she's like, well, that sounds good, that sounds like you have found the articles and journal articles that you need to kind of explain this so that you can make your presentation. And in other words, I was just by myself, and there wasn't confirmation for whether my topic was, I don't know, it was just beyond the people that were around me. So knowing that, I was like, okay, well, my GPA isn't great, but let me tell you, I have a wonderful mind, and you have a mind that can answer, and to go into that kind of research and understanding that, despite the fact that I had tried to take one course and was denied that opportunity, what did I receive to replace what I lost or whatever. And so that's that's how I think. And what that did for the entire company was we were able to take education and make the patient the focus. So you didn't go to work to be a narcissistic asshole. You went to work to solve problems because you had a dad that died of a heart attack. You had a aunt or uncle that had an aortic aneurysm and survived, which is highly unusual. Not very many people have an aortic aneurysm and survive. Like, you can die within minutes. You lose so much blood. And so that was the impetus for our research. That was why he didn't need, our president didn't need to generate fear in you to get you to work, because you were generating the desire to answer these questions because you had been affected by it personally. So, like, I didn't need psychopathy to make me work every day or invent or to, go into deeper into the research, because the topic that I was researching or I was a part of was personal. And so you didn't need to generate anything out of that. Every day I went to work, I was solving, why did my dad die from a sudden cardiac death? Like, sudden death. Like, what is sudden death? Where did it come from? What are the symptoms of sudden death? I was performing CPR on him. Did I perform CPR right? And, can you perform CPR on somebody that's died of sudden death? Well, we found out that obviously the sudden death meant that he had a coronary embolism, so there was no way, unless he would have been in a hospital immediately, there was no way we would have saved him. But, doing CPR, like, why didn't it work? Why did he still die? So those are the things that you deal with. They'll have ripples in your life for the rest of your life, because you don't need psychopathy or narcissism to generate results. So anyway, that's the culture that I came from, and that's why I'm so disturbed by the behavior that I see. And I would be so different when I would come to visit South Bend, because my purpose and the background that I was coming from, the generation of results was from a totally different kind of engine. And it was cerebral. It was not psychopathy at all. And, the people that were psychopathic, they eventually moved on, because you can only have so much. You can only pay so much attention to detail with certain things until you decide to move forward. So anyway, I don't know what the point of that was, but I was happy to talk about that. You just don't have to be a psychopath to generate results. What would generate results around here for me is to have a job. I want to take a shower. Why? You haven't employed me in years. Years. So what's the point of a shower? To get nasty? You have your naked men that were probably masturbating in your fucking shower for God knows how many hours out of, however, you got old men popping up in the kitchen spiritually and stuff. So probably nasty old men masturbating all the time. I don't want to be in your bathroom. I'm disgusted. That's all I can think of. I'm here, and the thoughts and everything. I feel like there are a lot of males here that just sit. And they do. They don't do much because there's not much to do, and there probably a lot of them are just not employed. Well, that's normal for this area. That's not my normal, because I didn't sit at home ever. I was always at work. Anyway, interesting.